Welcome to the Show Announcers Academy. This webinar series is in partnership with Agricultural Shows Australia. It's all about helping the next generation of agricultural show commentators prepare to pick up a microphone and is supported by funding from the Australian Government, Department of Agriculture, Water and the Environment as part of its Landcare Smart Farms capacity building program, because they appreciate the critical role agricultural shows play in connecting farmers and consumers, country and city Australians, and bringing together communities. My guest today is the one and only Angus Lane. Now, Angus has been a show announcer around Australia for more than 3 decades, so I'm really looking forward to sharing with you his story today. How are you, Angus?
I'm very well, thanks, Jen, and look, congratulations on this great initiative. It's something that's been needed for a very long time.
It is a wonderful initiative. Now, I read recently you wanted to be a show announcer since you were a child. So can you please go back and share that memory with us?
Gee, Jen, that's a long time ago. I was actually sitting on Machinery Hill in Brisbane and sitting with my country cousins from all parts of the Darling Downs and north of Brisbane as well. We used to gather every year. That was our big highlight of our year at the Ekka. And I was sitting alongside my mum, and we had actually the Kelly boys. The Kelly boys were clowns and entertainers, and then we saw the Grand Parade that same day, where everyone wanted to go and see. I mean, it was just amazing to see the Grand Parades in those days, the same as probably Sydney Royal is still today, which is nice. But I can always remember watching these Kelly boys, and my mother said to me, "If you could do anything you like, regarding cattle or sheep or goats or horses or whatever." She said, "What would you like to do?" I said, "I'd like to take that microphone off Mr. Hardman down there and be the Royal Show ring announcer at the Ekka." So that was when I was 9. I always remember my mum said to me, she said, "Well, if you work hard enough, you can do it. But life takes different paths." And I didn't fulfill that role until 1992 as chief announcer of the Brisbane Ekka after Mr. John Nash retired. But it was lovely to fulfill my dream in life.
And of course, you've gone on to announce at hundreds of shows. Do you have a list of how many you're up to now?
Not really, Jen. Look, I started at the small shows, just a one-day show actually, Jandowae, where we had our 2 farms, and that I give them all the credit. And then a gentleman by the name of Mr. Graham Jensen, OAM of Dalby, and Graham was the president of the Queensland Shows at the time, and he asked me to go into Dalby. He said, "Would you come in and do the show dumping at Dalby?" I said, "Graham, I've never done any show dumping in my life. I've done camp carpentry, never show dumping, and it's all right, mate. You'll fit in. You'll be fit." So I went in, and I'll always remember meeting fellows like Ron Easy, the Olympian show dumping rider, Guy Crichton, Johnny Fay, and the list went on. And I'd never forget saying to Guy Crichton, "Do you do this as a hobby?" And the guy, being very humble, said, "Yeah, mate, yes, I'm still learning." He'd only represented Australia at 2 Olympic Games, and here am I asking if he did it as a hobby. So, that's when I decided to go home and say, "Hey, if I want to do this, I'm really going to have to do something very special, and that's research." And that's when it all began, doing research.
And it's taken you probably right across Australia, has it?
It has, Jen, from Darwin right around to Perth, and they're all different. They all have their own personalities, the same as people do. So the most important thing is to always remember that when you walk into a show ring, no matter what show ring, whether it's a 1-day show or a 2-day show, always respect, number one, the ringmaster who's been appointed, the stewards that have been appointed, and above all, you're there to present their 12 months of hard work. And I think if you focus on those type of things, that's the most important thing. Again, it gets back to research and making sure what the Show Society wants and what they want you to implement is carried out. That's the most important thing.
What is your favourite part of a show?
Oh, without a doubt, the kids in the lead line class. That's very easy, because I used to, before the shows have changed now, Jen, and that's the challenge for new and young announcers, because the Privacy Act has changed everything. And I suppose that's one of the reasons why I decided to pull away from Sydney Royal Show, because I wasn't allowed to go down with a roving microphone and talk to those precious kids that I loved. But look, that's fine. That's the decision they made at the time, and you learn to accept things like that. But the whole thing, I'm not really singling out Sydney. It's happened everywhere. But I dare say that to me was probably just get that next generation, or the next generation actually, because those young ones are 3 to 8, but they're so honest. And I used to ask him questions about who did all the work at home, and it was always mum. And eventually, you'd just say about making the beds and getting them ready for school and doing things. I said, what did Dad do? What's Dad do? And, well, he usually sits in front of the TV and drinks a beer. So I can always remember the grandparents used to clap, the parents used to clap, and the kids were just amazing to talk to. But most of all, probably on top of that's the Grand Parade. There's the Grand Parade, without doubt, was the highlight of my announcing career, because being able to name people, I was lucky enough to go to the Beef Expos in Rockhampton as well for years, since 1991, and to research all those wonderful people and to do things. It was just a pleasure to meet them all. It's a pleasure to see their beginnings and see how successful and the growth that they went through, and then the horse people, the show horse people as well. But I dare say when they all come together in that Grand Parade, and there's no one, honestly, that does it better than Sydney Royal Show. It's just amazing to see what John Bennett was the ringmaster at the time. I had the pleasure of working with 4 or 5 ringmasters, and what they created is just so special, not only at Sydney, but Brisbane, Toowoomba at the time. And that's all changing now because of the workplace health and safety. So again, shows are forever changing in the requirements that are required to keep people safe. And there's many challenges out there in the future for show societies.
And you were just telling me a little earlier that when you first started out, you got a few little bum steers along the way. People were trying to trick you up, but along came a lovely lady who's turned into a lifetime partner for you. Tell us about Vicky and your relationship through the shows.
Yeah, well, we were both grew up in Brisbane, actually. Vicky and I were both educated in Brisbane, and then when I met Vicky and said that was the girl for me, and we were very successful with 2 farms we had, and we've got 4 beautiful kids who you never mention the word shows to, because we spend so much time away. We spend 10 months away from during each year, and the rest of the time again we're researching. So there were a lot of things the kids missed out on, sacrifices that the kids made for us. But Vicky was always there, and I suppose we developed a system whereby Vicky, she developed into an excellent penciler in show dumping. So she used to sit in the show dumping arena with the judge or the course builder, whoever it may be, sits at the table, and she relayed to me in my ear on 2-way the name of the horse, the name of the rider. I did all the research in regards to those people to try to remember it. And then at the end of their round, if they had 4 dumping penalties or they were eliminated or whatever, I could be announcing the hacks and the ponies and whatever else in the show ring. And I'd have my back to the show dumping arena, and I'd announce that they had just been eliminated, or they had 8 dumping penalties, and their time was 64.5 or whatever. And people would say, "How the hell does he do that? He's got his back to those the show dumping ring, and he's But they didn't realise, I suppose, the fact that Vicky was there relaying that information to me. So we were able to keep the whole show ring going. I could do everything around the ring. I could be anywhere. I could be outside the wood chopping arena. And Vicky, we still kept the show dumping going and people up to date. And I think, again, that's pretty important.
The tips and tricks of the trade, isn't there? And of course, throughout this series, we know that research is such a big part of being a show announcer. What's the best advice to someone who's thinking about picking up a microphone and maybe going down the path of show announcing? What would be your top tip to start them off with?
Well, most of all, preparation, because if you don't do preparation, you can't do a presentation. And also be passionate about what you do. Be passionate about people. It's not about I. When you go to a show, it's a we factor. And young announcers have to remember that. They're there representing all sections of that show society. And what they do personally, if someone comes up in an interview and says, "Well, Angus, you've come back from Perth," that's fine, comment on that. But don't focus on yourself. Focus on the people that you're there to talk about. I think that's probably the most important gift, and become a storyteller. I remember at Brisbane Ekka, our last Ekka actually, because the last year being cancelled, and 2019. I always remember Lindsay Douglas, the lovely Lindsay Douglas, coming into the broadcast box on about the second last day. And Lindsay said to me, "Angus, can I ask you a question?" I said, "Sure." And Lindsay said, "Why is it every morning that Vicky's in here at 6 o'clock in the morning typing, and you're out and about, you're never here until about 10 minutes when we switch on the microphone, before we switch the microphone off?" I said, "Lindsay, you will never, ever make a great commentator, sharing announcer, sitting on your backside in a broadcast box, waiting for the time to come down for the opening to play whatever you can. I always used to play No Business Like Show Business. And Graham Barker used to play another one, I'll think of it in a minute. But I said to Lindsay, the most important stories that you'll ever find out for yourselves up in the stables. It's up in the beef cattle sheds before we start today for the Grand Parade. And she said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, I always go up and spend at least 2 hours every morning. I go to a show, going down and talking to people, introducing myself and just researching them. Because the little stories, that's where you get your stories from. So, that's what I say to young people. When I went to shows, Vicky and I went to shows that we're invited to, I always tried to have them pay an extra night's accommodation for me. Because I used to travel or used to go into the township, whatever it may be, and for 8 hours or 9 hours, I used to walk and go and see every sponsor. Well, nearly every sponsor I could, major sponsor, introduce myself. So when they came into the show ring, I knew them. So what I'm saying is you build a lot of stories up over the people you meet, but you'll build a lot of stories up going to the stables and talking to people, and they don't mind. They're just wonderful, wonderful people. And the stories you get, about them, their family, and 4 and 5 generations, I could never tell that by sitting in the broadcast box if I didn't research that. So that's the best advice I can give them: become a storyteller.
Because I guess it can be quite overwhelming going into a small community who everyone knows everyone, but you're a bit of an outsider. So do you think that's a way to really, find a common ground and fit in with that community that you're about to announce at their show?
Very much, yeah, very much. You hit the nail on the head by saying that, because it's. I'll give you an example up in the Central Highlands show where I used to go to Emerald, Claremont, Capella, Springsure. And we used to see the same competitors, and I always made sure I tried at the first show to do my research on where they'd just been, where they competed, where they'd won, what something about the horses, whether it's a new horse, and find out the breeding of the horse, and so on. And the same as with the show horses. I used to spend time with them. And most of all, if I say this to the young announcers, always go and check your amplifiers, because you'll find that people that have been there before, and particularly in camp drafting, and no offense to the camp drafters, but you'll always have the odd camp drafter that's had a bit of rum in his coffee. He's turned the volumes up the wrong way for whatever reason. And so always make sure you check your treble, your bass, and check your master and the volume, and check it all out and test it all out before you switch it on the next morning, because it's pretty embarrassing when you switch it on and it goes, but and also I took all my own gear. I had 4 two-ways that were great quality two-ways. We had our own channel, so no one swore at us and interfered with us. And also I took my own roving microphone. I always made sure I had a fantastic quality roving microphone, that if you went to shows and they only had one to lead, well, how are you going to go down the ring? And that's when you have to think about, well, if that did happen, how do I get those results back? And Beaudesert do that very well, whereby they actually have the redcoats and they do it on a little card system. And the card system was taken back to the broadcast box, and we had a little hook, just like a little clip. It was clipped onto the hook. We pulled it up through the window on a bit of wire or a little bit of rope, and we're able to read out that information straight away. Because I was fanatical. Probably if I could use Tim and Lindsay as 2 of the examples that I thought the world of, and working with them was just great. But when you're announcing at a show, the most important thing is to try and announce those horses while they're in their ring being sashed. No use doing it when they're down the stables. They're gone. They're finished. So when Tim was doing show dumping, or Graham Barker, who I love working with as well at Sydney, we always had a meeting each day to start off with, and then from there we worked out our priorities. But above all, when those horses lined up down the ring and we had those results, it was up to us to get those results out straight away.
And